Hey everybody, Mr. Wallowitz here. I want to go over a Google Slides notes presentation called The Causes of the First World War. So a couple of definitions to go over before we get into this. Let me get rid of this here. We have militarism, the belief or desire of a government or people that a country should maintain a strong military capability and to be prepared to use it aggressively to defend or promote national interests. Alliances, a union or association formed for mutual benefit, especially between countries or organizations. Imperialism, a policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. And nationalism, an extreme form of patriotism, especially marked by a feeling of superiority over other countries. So these aren't just terms that we need to define. These are, when we break it down, the causes of the First World War. There is a trigger that is going to spark the war, but that is not a cause of it. These here, and we're going to get into a little bit of detail over the next couple of slides, are the main causes of the First World War. Alliances. Alliances has been forged throughout Europe for almost 100 years. Since really the early 1800s, European countries were allying themselves for mutual interest, right? If one country felt they lacked in military capability, well, they would try to sign a treaty that would serve as military protection in exchange for maybe goods and services that the other country may not have had. So they're starting to see that there are common interests between the countries that are signing treaties with each other for protection, for trading, for whatever. Many of these alliances contain promises that if one country was attacked, then the others would come to its aid. An attack on one country meant that they were attacked as well. And so countries who were in the treaties who weren't attacked felt like they were and would fight on their behalf. Now here's a big cluster of alliances throughout Europe over the last 100 years before the First World War, and it is entangled. So Bulgaria and Serbia are kind of going to be in the center of all of this, while Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, are going to play a huge role. But if you look on the fringes, Italy is involved because they have alliances with Austria-Hungary and Germany. Germany is involved because they have alliances with Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, who have an alliance with Bulgaria. And on the other side of this, we have Serbia, who has a treaty with Russia. And later on, Russia is going to sign treaties with both France and Great Britain. So France and Great Britain are going to be at war against Italy because of Bulgaria and Serbia. That is how intertwined this is, and interconnected all of these countries are, that a dispute between Bulgaria and Serbia, and kind of really Austria-Hungary, as you're going to see, is going to bring in Italy to fight against France and Great Britain. We have imperialism. So Great Britain and France had started to expand their influence, expand their cultures throughout the world, particularly now in Africa and Western Asia. They also already have a foothold in China with Germany, and Germany is concerned that with the presence of England and France and their influence becoming bigger and bigger, now we have the influence of the United States and China as well, that they're starting to become a little bit more defensive and become a little bit more worried that whatever they have going on throughout the world is now at threat. And so tensions are going to build both militarily and diplomatically between Germany and England and France. Tensions are high already as a result of imperialism, trying to spread the culture and influence throughout the world. For one reason or another, and early on it was mostly because they were trying to get the establish a foreign market in Asia and access to the Pacific Ocean and trading with the rest of the world. But you're also trying to take land and spread your beliefs throughout the world as well. Militarism. A growing divide in Europe had led to an arms race. So like in the 40 years prior to the First World War, the armies of both France and Germany more than doubled. Germany and England have both tried to establish superiority in the seas with their expanding navies. You can't dominate the world or spread your influence and your cultures throughout the world if you don't have a navy to defend yourselves in case of an attack. So they can't establish diplomatic ties. They can't establish themselves militarily in other parts of the world without the navy. There's no way of getting from one place to the other without it. So their navies are expanding. And like we were talking about at this time too with the United States and with Assistant Secretary to the Navy Theodore Roosevelt, who would eventually become vice president, who would eventually become president, expands the U.S. Navy because he knows without it, then they can't expand into foreign markets and expand into foreign countries as well. So the navies and these arms races between these countries is going to have a major role in feeling this superiority, feeling that their countries are the best and that their countries are better than anybody else because our military might is so great. Nationalism. Well, all of the major countries in Europe had developed a strong sense of nationalism, the belief that their country is superior to others. They felt that they were very strong, whether it was identity or if it was through their military, and they were going to stop at nothing to prove their strength. If they felt threatened, then they were going to use their military strength to show that they mean business. So here we come now to the trigger, the spark that's going to ignite World War I. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand. Franz Ferdinand was the heir, the presumptive heir, to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was very unpopular. He wanted Austria-Hungary to have a larger presence throughout the world. He saw what Germany, England, France, the United States were doing in Asia and Africa for European countries and felt, why isn't Austria-Hungary doing this either? Why aren't we up there with? He had these grand visions of Austria-Hungary being a world power, the likes of Germany, Great Britain, and France. But a lot of his predecessors, a lot of the people in the country didn't want that to happen. I think that they really want to try to focus more attention on their place in Europe before they would do anything like that. So he had this idea of an ever-expanding empire that wasn't shared with a lot of people. So that made him a little bit unpopular. He was instructed by his father, who was the emperor, to go to Sarajevo in Bosnia and inspect the Austro-Hungarian troops stationed there. Well, however, a Serbian terrorist group called the Black Hand had planned on killing Ferdinand at the parade welcoming him. 7 young men who were trained in grenade throwing and marksmanship were stationed by the Black Hand along the parade route to throw grenades at the car driving Franz Ferdinand and his wife. All 7 of them missed their target, but they did manage to injure some bystanders, so at least they got something done. Ferdinand insisted on going to the hospital where the injured were taken. He wasn't hurt, but the injured who were hurt in the grenade attack were at a hospital, and he wanted to go visit them. Another member of the Black Hand, Gavrilo Princip, saw Ferdinand in the car that he was driving and fired 2 shots into the car, killing both Ferdinand and his pregnant wife. Ferdinand was hit in the neck and his wife was hit in the stomach, killing Ferdinand, his wife, and their unborn child. It is interesting to note here, too, that the driver of the car happened to just drive by a diner or like a cafe or something where Princip was having lunch or breakfast or coffee or something. Stopped because he realized he was going the wrong way, right in front of Princip, backed up, giving Princip more time to understand what was going on and giving him enough time to come into the street and fire the fatal shots into the car. Did the driver have a hand in this? Maybe, maybe not. There isn't a lot of detail about that. But if you read further into the story, it kind of makes it seem like, yeah, maybe the driver was in on it the whole time. So Franz Ferdinand's assassination is going to set off a chain reaction throughout Europe. Austria-Hungary, like many countries around the world, blamed the Serbian government for the attack, that the Black Hand was working hand in hand with the Serbian government, that Franz Ferdinand from a rival country is going to come in, and they are going to set up something that they could assassinate Franz Ferdinand. So an investigation into the assassination takes place to see if there was government involvement. A letter was sent from Austria-Hungary to Serbia, known as the July Ultimatum. It contains specific demands aimed at preventing the publication of propaganda advocating for the violent destruction of Austria-Hungary. So Serbia receives, they get this, the July Ultimatum. They don't agree with everything. They reach out to their Russian allies and say, hey, if we reject this, do we have your support here? Or if we have to go to war against Austria-Hungary, are you going to be on our side? Russia assures them that that is the case. So Serbia rejects 7 of the 10 items in a letter sent to them, and in turn, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia, supporting Serbia, declares war on Austria-Hungary. Germany, supporting Austria-Hungary, declares war on Russia. England and France, supporting Russia, declares war on Germany, and so on and so forth until most of the European powers are at war against each other. It is a very involved alliances here that they, because of two countries having a disagreement and declaring war on each other, that almost all of Europe is now involved in this, and it blows up into what they would call the Great War. This is also termed a war to end all wars, as there was some hopes that the First World War would have been the last one. And we have World War II, the sequel, so we know that that wasn't the case. But as we get into this, you'll see why it wasn't the case, why World War I was fought, what happened afterwards, and then the build-up towards a Second World War. So with this, you're going to get a Google Doc of more alliances. Just review it. There's nothing more you need to do with that yet. Maybe for the test you will. But for right now, review these notes, review the Google Doc with the alliances on it, and that's it. All right, so thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.